All right, everyone, welcome to day 2 of the FireWife Summit. I am super excited to be wrapping up. This seemed like so long that we were waiting to put this on, and here we are wrapping it up already. I'd like to thank our sponsors, MomWeb's Hosting, Carney Strong, Multimedia Content Solutions, Mouse Ear Magic Travel, Laura Sierra, Appetite for Design, and Stitching the Night Away for allowing me to keep this a free summit for everybody to attend. So on that note, we are skipping to Julie Bevers being here to talk to us about a topic that I see pop up quite a bit in our group. And just I don't know if I really want to go into your history. I think I'll let you go ahead and go with that history, but I just appreciate you being open to coming in and talking today, and especially just you don't even care what rabbit trail we go down as far as as everybody talking. I think it's just going to be so much fun while we talk about some hard stuff today. So I want to thank you for being here, Julie, and I will go ahead and I'm going to turn this over to you, and you can go ahead and just run with it.
Awesome. Thank you. I actually kept some notes because I could talk for like 3 hours and I don't want to do that. So,
which is funny because when we talked back and forth, I went to go like write more stuff and I just talked with you. I did not write anything down.
Yeah, I know.
I was just like,
I know.
Back and forth.
Because there's so much. There's so much. So I was glad to hear you say that we're going to do this again because there is so much. And I just want to like pour everything I know into people's brains and help them in whatever way possible. So just a really quick introduction. My name's Julie Bevers. I am in California, and I am married to a firefighter here in Sacramento. And we just celebrated 26 years in July. Yay. And we were separated a whole bunch early on in the 26 years. And it's why I decided to do what I do now. So I am a life coach. I work with fire families in crisis. I'm also a chaplain here in Sacramento. I'm a fire chaplain. I'm also a law enforcement chaplain. And I actually work also part-time as a hospice chaplain. So all kinds of stuff. I have the honor and privilege of working with FBHA, Jeff Dill. And I'm the resident chaplain, and I go and do workshops and teaching and work with the families of the firefighters and EMS that have died by suicide. So I go to that retreat and get to work with those families, and it's the best thing in the world. So yeah, that's kind of the synopsis of that. But my passion, like much like Val, and it's exciting to see these firewives come together. Barbara was, that was amazing, like such good information. So I'm hoping to add some tools onto that. I can't top it because she did such a good job with boundaries. So
there's no topping it. You guys are both going to be amazing. I'm going to
partner with her, exactly.
Yeah.
And I just want to give you guys some takeaways that you can apply in life and with your firefighters. I'm going to assume, like Barbara, that everybody wants to be married to their spouse and that they want to make things better. And so one of the things that I want to address is how we can do that, how we can be a safe person in our spouse's life. And I didn't start out as a safe person. When my husband would come home and tell me things, I didn't always respond well. And then he felt like he wasn't able to articulate it at the time, but we know now looking back. Sometimes if he had rough shifts or something like that, and then I reacted poorly, or not even reacted poorly, but if I reacted big to something he told me, then he felt like he had to take care of my stuff and his, and he didn't know how to do that either because no training, right? So I wasn't trained on how to be a firewife, and he wasn't trained on how to handle the emotional stuff of being a firefighter, but also even being a husband, right? He wasn't used to that. So anyway, so I just want to tell you, most people, like, we think we're equipped for marriage, and I'm like, is that even ever possible? Because I'm still being equipped, and I've been married for 26 years. And we all grow and change, and so I kind of try to flow through it. But one thing that I teach my clients, and this is hard because I'm used to working with people either in small groups or individually, when I work with people individually and I give them some of this information, they pinky swear to me that they're not going to use it in a like deliberately in a way that's going to hurt their spouse. So so I say that, and I need a pinky swear from all of you, because I want you guys to know that the analogy that I use, I know Val likes metaphors, I do too. So the one that I use that really gets, it helps me remember, and it helps my clients remember, is if you think of like a military, like an armored vehicle, and say they poured everything they had into this armored vehicle. The military like came up with this machine, this beast of a machine, like $25 million, okay? And it's indestructible. Like, you can't do anything to harm this thing. You can try to blow it up. People can try to run it over. They can attack it from the outside. You can have a whole army of people shooting at it, and nobody's gonna be able to hurt this equipment, this machine, right? This armored vehicle. So what if you get an invite to come inside? Like, check out the, like, what makes this thing run? What makes this thing tick, right? So you get this like invite, and you're like maybe the only one that ever gets the invite, right? And you get to go down in that thing, and you get to see all the innards of this machine, all of the innards of this indestructible $25 million beast of a machine. And you get in there and you're like, wow, this is incredible. But then you have a baseball bat, and you take one swing with a baseball bat and you can wipe it out. Like, you have the potential to really injure this machine to where it doesn't run anymore. And I feel like we do have that power in our relationships sometimes, where when we're a trusted person and we've been invited in to somebody else's brain and they're saying like, I don't even know how this all works, but like, come be here with me. And we don't understand the privilege that is. Yeah, we have the potential to really do some harm. So I like to teach people, and this goes for how they treat us as well, by the way. This is not one-sided. Everything that I share is really like, our brains are worth $25 million too, right? So it is a great way to have your spouse understand, and also to know, what is your baseball bat, right? Like, what are the things that you know could injure him? And I know for me, I found out early on when he shared things with me that was privileged information, and I shared it with my girlfriend or my mother. You know, early on, I got married really young, and my mom was one of my best friends, and my friends were like, you know, I was used to like that, sharing everything with them. And some of that information, it was privileged. It was a privilege to be invited into some of the things that he was sharing with me. And so for me to go out and share with other people, it wasn't kind. Like, it wasn't a good thing to do. And it caused him to stop wanting to share with me. So if you are doing that, that is something to work on. Now, if he shares something with you and he shows you something that you don't understand, or you don't know how to process, or you saw like an inside scoop that kind of freaked you out, or that is something different, right? So if he shares something about a call he was on or something like that, and you don't have a place to put that, you can definitely tell him like, whoa, that was heavy information. Like, I have to process that, right? But just be careful that you're not running out and doing something that's not safe for him or in your marriage. Just understand that privileged information. So I think that's like the primary. Just understand that if he invites you in and shares with you, that he's trusting you to do that, and don't use that against him. Right? Don't use that information to harm him in any way, no matter how mad you get, right? Because sometimes we get mad and we would like to take a baseball bat, right? Not that I would ever do that.
No.
I'm just saying,
Yeah.
Sometimes we get mad. And so we just have to understand that there's some things that you just would never, ever, ever do. And I would never want to take a baseball bat to my husband, you know, to my husband.
I don't want to take
it
down to a personal level.
That's right. Yeah. Exactly. So So I definitely want you to know that we do have that power. We do, and especially with some of that privileged information. So be careful with that. Understand that you are privileged to have it, and treat it well. So the other thing that I want to say that I just want to stand on a rooftop and say is that if I hear firefighters say all the time that this is a calling, like this is a calling on their life. They don't know why they want to do what they do, whether it be the God they believe in or a higher power or whatever, they just know that it's in them. I personally believe that if they are called to it, they are wired for it, right? So I do believe that we are wired to do hard things, that our bodies can heal physically, and I also believe that we can heal emotionally as well. So like PTSD, it's a psychological injury, right? So just like if you have a physical injury, we can also heal, we can heal those, and we can heal psychological injuries. So I say that just to say that if this is a calling, I do believe that we are wired to do hard things. However, just like they go to an academy and get training for their calling, right? I've never heard a firefighter be like, well, this is my calling and I just come by it naturally. There is not a fire I don't know how to attack. I know all the things and I wasn't trained a day in my life. I've never heard a firefighter say that, right? What they do is when they know it's a calling on their life, they go out and they apply to departments, right? And then they go through academies, they do all this training. So the gap has been that in some departments, this is being changed. There is a shift, but it's slow. but we aren't doing the mental training. We aren't doing the emotional training. So that is something that is beginning to shift, but it's still, we have a long ways to go. However, just know that the academy, the ongoing training that they do, we want to provide some emotional training as well. And I think that FireWife should have that as well, because like, especially if you didn't even sign up for this, like you married this guy and then later he decided he wanted to do this. And sometimes that can leave. I have a lot of clients that have felt very victimized by that. They're like, I didn't even sign up for this. He was a school teacher, you know? I mean,
it's always a school teacher to a firefighter, I swear.
It happens really is. All the time. It happens all the time. Or he was like even a vehicle mechanic. I just had a client that was her story. And she was like, and now he's a firefighter. Like, so just to know that they do go through the physical training and the training on how to be a firefighter, they need the mental training too. So if you can offer that to your spouse and just say, hey, like there are some things that we can learn and that you can learn to do well so that you can stay healthy, right? And so that's like with EMDR or anything like that. Basically, the reason that any of this like ends up like a psychological injury is when our brain can't make sense of it, right? So if it's encoded in some kind of terror, right? So something happens and our brain receives it and we don't know what to do with it, right? So if you think of your brain like a filing system, and we know how to file stuff away, right? You can pretty much file things away, but when something happens that shouldn't happen, like babies shouldn't die, right? All those things that we as human beings, even though that it happens every day, but our belief that it shouldn't happen, it's like, where do you file that? Where do you put that, right? Or some kind of terror that happens on the job, it's like, where do you put that? And so that doesn't get filed, and it ends up eventually kind of being in this overflow place where it's kind of just in our brain swarming, right? And it happens to us too. Like, it, you know, and I can say for what I do here in Sacramento, I'm a trauma and crisis chaplain. So I do death notifications for the coroner's office. I go to homicides and suicides and all of this, you know, I'm on scene with firefighters and law enforcement. And I've had a few calls that left me pretty foggy, and I didn't know how to file those things away. And at the time I was like, well, I'm made for this. I'm called to be a chaplain, like, and I'm trained to be a chaplain. Like there's nobody better than me. Like I can get all up in my head, like, and sometimes I have to feel that way or I'd be scared out of my mind to approach some of these scenes. So I do have to keep that mentality of there's not a scene that I can't handle. But I have definitely gotten in my own way and ended up pretty foggy. and maimed, so to speak, by some of the stuff that I've seen. I know that one time I had a night that I had 2 babies that died, 2 different families, and my daughter was pregnant. And one of the babies, the way that the baby had died was, it was a neglect kind of situation. And when I got home, the next time I was talking to my daughter, I kind of went off on her. Like, I was like, and listen, I don't care if you breastfeed or if you bottle feed, but you are never propping a blanket up under their baby's chin. Like, that's my grandchild. She was like, okay, whoa, like, where did that come from? And I was like, that was kind of an inappropriate response to walking in and looking at my daughter's swollen belly. Like, okay. And I recognized that, oh, like, I'm still processing that night, right? I actually didn't know it until my daughter started showing. And it brought that up for me. So that was something that I was like, oh, that was an inappropriate response for the situation. The situation was walking in and seeing my daughter pregnant, you know, and my response was abnormal, right? And so I don't think my brain is broken. I think I'm a normal human being having normal responses, right, to abnormal circumstances. And so for our firefighters, they are human beings, right? And they can handle a whole lot of stuff. But sometimes something gets under their skin, and we never know what it's going to be, right? And they don't know what it's going to be. So there's things that can take them back to when they were 3 years old and they got bit by a dog. And all of a sudden they come on the scene and there's a dog that's really aggressive, and like that stuff's still floating around in their brain, and they haven't fully processed it even as an adult now, right? And so then they kind of freeze. So that's the kind of stuff I see as a fire chaplain. That's the kind of stuff that I see when I go and do debriefings and something's kind of gone sideways. It's the kind of thing I see when I'm working with individual firefighters. So I say that all to say that their brains are not broken. They're actually wired for this. I do fully believe that they're wired for this, but they also need some training. And we might too, for any kind of trauma. And you guys can think about this even like in a past relationship that you've been in. So now you think, oh my gosh, he's on his phone, he must be cheating on me. Because a past relationship, right? That just means that something it's not filed correctly in your brain, that is still something that just is like danger, danger, danger. Like, this is what that means. And It's not necessarily that means, but that's what it means when we have like that baggage, right? That we just haven't put it in the right place. So I know I go on and on, but I'm like, I see it over and over. So I'm like trying to address it in the way that I can. Let's see. So the other thing I think that I want to, I again want to just kind of focus a little bit for just a minute on the fact that we can have physical injuries. I talked to Val about this, about like, if you got rear-ended, like people will say, oh, the next day it's really going to hurt, right? You might have some whiplash. We expect that with maybe getting rear-ended, right? But we don't necessarily plan and prepare for that psychological injury, right? And we don't understand that maybe the next day we're going to be a little bit foggy, or something's going on, or we're irritable, or, right? Those are the kinds of things. That's a psychological trauma. It doesn't mean that it's going to go on like that, right? So we don't have to freak out as firewives. We don't have to go, oh my gosh, he came home and he was super irritable and he yelled at the kids and I don't understand what's going on. And then he says, well, I had a bad call last night. We don't have to go, oh my gosh, he's going to die by suicide. He has PTSD. Right. And so that's kind of what I'm seeing in the industry, is people are starting to kind of freak out over this PTSD thing. And I'm like, here's the deal. Just because he had a rough night does not mean that, however, if he has an injury that needs to be treated, right? So it's normal for our body to swell after we've been hit by a vehicle, you know, like if we have whiplash or something like that. It's normal. But if we're still hurting in a couple of weeks, we might need to see a doctor. If we're really, really injured and we know like we can't move our arm, we might need to see a doctor. right? So it's the same thing. Like if you're having some of these responses and you're seeing some of these responses immediately after he's had a crisis, if he hasn't been debriefed, that's kind of a big deal, right? So I believe in debriefings after. I personally wish that we could all be debriefed all the time, because you never know what's going to affect you, and it's always nice to talk about it. EMDR is such a great tool, and some of the other therapies, because it really is like if you had a bone that was broken and you didn't know it was broken, or you had a fracture and it healed not like the correct way, and it was causing you a lot of pain. That's kind of what EMDR, it's, as much as people don't want to go in for therapy, and our firefighters don't necessarily want to go to the doctor. I know mine is never wanting to go to the doctor, right?
Mm-hmm.
He'd rather just like take some ibuprofen and numb the pain. That's all alcohol or any of the stuff, right? So I will tell you, I do a whole program for firefighters that want to reduce their alcohol consumption. So I don't say like you have to quit drinking, right? They don't necessarily want to go to AA, but they know that they're misusing alcohol. They know that they don't actually typically know that they're using it to numb something. But as human beings, like we're wired to avoid pain and increase pleasure. And alcohol, substances, that kind of stuff, I mean, Netflix, pornography, anything that feels good and numbs the pain, like that's just the way we're wired, right? Avoid pain, seek pleasure. So it's just that some of those things have a negative net effect. So it's the same thing if you're a firefighter was in a some kind of accident or and had a broken arm. It's a matter of, if it's not reset right, you might have to go do some physical therapy. That's EMDR, the therapies, going and talking to peer support, that kind of stuff. That's all it is, right? So if we can just let them know that like they're wired for this, however, they might have to do some ongoing training. They might need some physical therapy to get well. It's good.
And I think that's a good analogy to even try and bring home when you're worried that there's probably some issues going on. It's just like, if you broke your arm, you'd get it fixed, right? This is just as much a part of us as the muscle and the bone are. Just as
well, and I don't know about you, I definitely was not trained in school or anywhere on how to take care of myself emotionally, right? Typically we're not, and some of us came from not having, really having a poor foundation of emotional coping skills, right? So then you're throwing this job onto it. And so for firewives, for firefighters, across the board, our coping skills as human beings, not so good these days, right? Not so good. So it is important that you don't freak out when he gets home. If he cries or something like that, you know what? Crying's an appropriate response. If he's been on a call that there was something really sad, crying is appropriate, right? If he comes home and he's yelling, if it's an ongoing thing, no good, right? So go back to Barbara's boundaries. Brilliant information, Barbara, like so good. But if he comes home and he's irritable, that's actually a pretty normal response. You can still have boundaries, but that's a pretty normal response to maybe his night before. So that's a whole other, I could talk for 2 hours just on that alone. But some of these responses are appropriate, and I can actually make a list and put it in the group for people that just want an easy kind of go-to list of what's a normal response, right? We're human beings that have normal human responses to abnormal situations. So it doesn't mean that he can abuse you. It doesn't mean he can come home and scream at the kids and things like that. Like, you can still have some boundaries, but it also means that you don't have to freak out, right? So if he comes home and he's sad and you're like, oh my gosh, he's crying, I've never seen him cry before, this is like, no, don't do that. Don't do that. You can tell him, like, this is new for us. This is new for us, right? And then the most important thing that you can do, in my opinion, this is totally just my opinion, I don't have science behind it, except I do, but connect, right? Connect with him. But this is where I think it's really important to have a plan in advance. This I can't emphasize enough. So Val and I were talking about this the other day, and I was talking about, Val, I have pennies.
All right.
So I was telling Val that one of my favorite tools that I use in my own life and that I teach people is to use these pennies, and I have 10 pennies here, and I use them as a fuel check, right? So every morning you can wake up and you can decide, like, how do I feel? Like, did I get enough sleep? Like, just check in. I call it my God pod, but check in with your body and just check in. How do I feel? And if you feel like you're a 10, like if you had great sleep and you feel like emotionally like everything is good, then you would put 10 pennies in your right pocket. And that's your fuel level going into your day. If you wake up and you're still thinking about stuff that happened the day before, you have a lot of stress, you have to judge that and decide what is your fuel level like. So if it's at a 7, then you put 7 pennies in your right pocket, 3 pennies in your left, right? If you're at a 3 pennies in the right pocket, right? Your fuel level, you only have 3 pennies, right? So the important thing to know is that when your fuel level is low, I would say like a 1 to 5 or a 1 to 4, know that you're going to be probably angry. You're going to be negative. You're going to be irritable. And this goes for him too, right? You're going to be irritable. There's probably going to be some fighting, some arguments that happen. So it's important to know what your fuel level is. When your fuel level's in kind of that upper range and say like a 6 to 10 range, that's when you have compassion. That's when you feel love. That's when you feel empathy, right? That's when you have more joy and happiness in your life. That's when you're open for connection and positive connection. So I think the fuel level is so, so, so good. Yeah, chronic illness calls your penny spoons. Exactly. So it's so important to know what is your fuel. Like what things deplete you. I know that if I have 3 pennies in my right pocket and I'm only fueled that much, I'm not going to have difficult conversations. That is not the time I'm going to bring up, our son getting a poor grade, or, like I'm not going to engage in conversations that I don't have the fuel to follow through and have a decent conversation. Like it's going to end up in an argument. So it's just important to know your fuel and to know what fuels you and to be doing those things in advance, right? So that's like, again, I could do hours on self-care. This is something that I teach daily. And this is something that I have to do daily, that I have to put into practice every single day. Where am I at? Where's my fuel? And it's something that my husband and I talk about so that we kind of know where we're at. And it's kind of like rules of engagement, right? So I think it's really important to know your fuel and to also know his level. The goal is always to connect in a healthy way. And especially when he's had a rough time, we want to connect in a healthy way. So I call it my extraordinary self-care plan. I think it's important for him to have one and for you to have one. So it should be completely where it's across the board. You both have a self-care plan. You both have things that you do to take care of yourself. It's not natural. We're not taught this, right? We are just not taught this, which is really unfortunate because it's so important. So have those kinds of plans in advance. We want to do these kinds of things in advance so that when a crisis comes up, we know like this is what we're dealing with and this is the plan. So like for my husband, I know like these are the conversations we have. When you come home and you've had a rough shift, how much interaction do you want to have? Do you want to have some downtime? Do you want to be left alone? Do you want me to, just let the dog, do you want to just pet the dog? Would you like to pet me? Like these are conversations that I mean, it's important to have in advance when you're in a really good place so that that kind of, if he wants engagement or if he just needs to process some things, I think that's a really important way to know if you're a safe person to him, is that he doesn't have to take care of you when he's low, but you have to be able to tell him like, I don't know if I have it in me, right? So you have to decide that, but it's really important to have like those conversations in advance when you're in a really good place, just so that you can best support each other.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree. That was what I was talking about last night. Being the proactive about it
Yes,
goes just so much. And you went through some training, but this is stuff that even with your training you've learned over the years, and we've
absolutely.
all flubbed on it and had to start
I
back
still
all
do.
over again. I know
I still
exactly.
do. Like I do all the wrong things all the time because
Yeah,
I'm a human being as well.
yeah.
I still want to fix him when
Yes,
he's hurting.
yes.
When he's upset, I still want to fix him because it makes me so uncomfortable and I want to be comfortable.
Hmm.
So I want him to feel better so I can feel better.
Hmm.
I still do that to him, even though I teach every day that we're not responsible for each other's comfort,
Right.
right? That's an inside job.
Yeah.
And I still do that wrong sometimes.
Well,
I'm
and
getting better at it.
I know I fell back into that too, because once the kids were out of the house, then I just was gonna mother him, that
Yes,
kind of
you're
thing.
like, let me pick on you.
Yeah, it's like this is what I do. I gotta have somebody.
Yeah. So I teach my clients that life is 50-50. It's 50% positive and 50% negative, right? So I teach that sometimes he's going to come home and he's going to be mad or sad or frustrated. That's okay, right? That's okay. If it's an ongoing thing and he's like that more than like we want to see that there's an ebb and flow of that. That goes
Hmm.
for us too. But we can be sad. We can have tension in our home sometimes.
Hmm.
That's normal,
Yeah,
right? We
and we
also
just
know
gotta
that we're
work
going to
through it.
have joy, right? I love the contrast of life, right? When it's really, really dark, we can certainly appreciate the light.
Yeah.
When we've been fighting, we can certainly appreciate the makeup,
Right. Right,
right? We can enjoy
exactly.
like the contrast of both of those things.
Yep, the positive to the negative.
Definitely.
We've got a
Yeah.
couple of questions in here.
Yeah.
Kim's asked, this is a big one. What if someone has friends that are trying to help and the firefighter feels everyone is out to get him? That's a big one.
Out to get him in what way? Like he's paranoid, like that he's the bad guy. Like, can you clarify a little bit more? Because sometimes it is
Uh,
paranoid. Like they feel like everybody thinks that they're broken.
yeah. Kim, if you can come. Actually, Kim, if you want to unmute yourself even, that would be the
Yeah, that'd be
easiest
great.
way. That'd be much faster than waiting for the type. Let's click on through here while she comes on. Permission to unmute, Kim. Joanne's just wondering why they haven't implemented classes at the beginning of their career as firemen on things that occur or symptoms of PTSD.
They're starting to.
It,
So some
it's
departments are starting to.
it's because it hasn't been recognized. It wasn't even
Exactly.
recognized as an issue until recently. So,
Yeah.
it,
Yeah. And there is kind of this thing of like the whole, I mean, we call it brainwashing, but the whole thing of like when they go into the academy, and I know even for my work, like I have to feel like a badass or I could not do the things that I do. I see a whole lot of death and I have to feel strong and confident and capable. And so they've done a great job of setting these guys up for success and doing some great training, especially like if they're a medic, like you could be a great medic, but they don't know, not all departments, not all people know how to do that. How do we set them up for success and make them feel really strong and capable? Also tell them they might get screwed, right? They might have a brain injury that like it is difficult for them and their family, right? So you're basically saying like, hey, you can do anything. You can face the fire. You're going to go running in when other people are running out, right? All those things, but trying to teach them. We are getting better, even like with cancer, right? So when you look at like, now they're cleaning their gear better, right? They're doing the things that, they're doing drills when something goes sideways. Now they're doing drills and they're doing all these things for ongoing training. We want to get them to the point where it's kind of like brushing your teeth every day, right? I don't go without brushing my teeth because I don't want any kind of decay. Like I want my teeth to be pretty. I want them to function. Right? It's the same thing with our brain. Like we got to clean that stuff out. we got to keep it clean. And they haven't been taught that yet. And part of that is it's kind of new. it's kind of new. They didn't know what was going sideways before. So that it's new information, and a lot of them don't want to think that they're susceptible to it. So that's part of it, is they're like, no, we're good. Because to say that they're not good means that they're in danger, right? And a lot of them don't know how to deal with that. And it's so much easier to just say, no, like, I got this. I'm good. I'm just tired, or I'm just whatever, or to numb out with alcohol, right? So much easier, right? It's how much easier is it to take headache medicine every day instead of look at, wait, I've had a headache for 8 days in a row. Why am I taking headache medicine, right? And so it's the same thing with any of that. It's like, we have to get to the root issue to be able to really solve it. And that work is still being done.
So Kim did unmute herself. So Kim, go ahead and ask your question. Go ahead and just talk directly to her.
Yeah.
Well, this person I'm talking about, he worked for my husband several years ago, and he's now a paramedic, and he would respond to a call, and it was a line of duty death with a volunteer. And he spent some time in a facility, and he's come back home, and his wife has talked to us and said he's gone back down the drain. And when his mates talk to him, one in general that he grew up with, he says everyone's out to get him. And I don't know what he means by that, but I'm concerned for the wife and the son.
You feel like they're in danger, maybe?
Not so much in danger as physical abuse. She's fighting to keep her marriage.
Well, that's good, because it sounds like he probably is too. So they have the same priority with that.
Yes,
so,
I believe so. It's just that this incident sparked another incident with his volunteer company. So, and he was an officer on that call. So it's sometimes he's not making appointments he's supposed to go to, and she's just at her wit's end. I was hoping that she would be on this evening, but she's not.
So I always offer to people that, we can we can offer tools and we can offer support. We can't force anybody to do anything.
Right.
That, we have free will. Unfortunately, because I wish I could control the world sometimes and be a better place. But I've tried. I started trying with my husband and my kids. It doesn't work. I can barely control my dog. I can barely control myself. But I can definitely offer in love, always, especially with, if it's a dear friend of yours, if it's somebody, you want somebody that can speak truth into his life, right? This is a great thing, by the way, to have a list of people, a handful of people that can speak truth into your life. If you're not seeing things clearly, that can speak truth, ask your husband, ask your spouse, who is a safe person that, if you're kind of foggy, right? Because sometimes that happens to our brains. Sometimes we have the files that are everywhere, right? That file system. And who can we have that says, you know what? I see something going on with you. Because I love you, I don't want to hurt you in any way. I'm not saying this to hurt you, but because I care about you, man, I just want to make sure you're okay. And again, offer that, just like if they had a physical injury and they might need some care for that, or at least to know why it's hurting, it's okay to do that with our emotions too, right? They just haven't had that training yet. It's the same thing, if there's a fire and something goes sideways, if there's a car wreck, something goes sideways. Afterwards, everybody wants to look at that and go, what can we do differently next time? What can we do different, right? And so it can be the same thing with your friend, where is he using the tools? So when he went for a little while and gained some tools, is he still using those? And sometimes it's just a word of encouragement that say, hey, I know you were in a rough spot before and you got some tools. Are you using those? Is there anything else that I can do to support you that, when people, listen, We all do it. It's like, how many diets have you started? How many things have you known would be good for you, but do you actually do it? We should all be doing yoga and meditation and praying and eating well and all of the things, right? We don't always do it. I teach this stuff and I don't always do it. So let him know that, like, hey, you know, you had some tools that you gained before. How's that going? Right? Is there anything that you know you could be doing that would be helpful, that I can support you in any way? And just offer, just in love, that like, hey, we're concerned. It's okay. I think, you know, it's okay to say that you're concerned about somebody you love, right? If it comes across in love. If you come in and you've been invited into their armored vehicle and you come in and start judging them and saying, hey, you shouldn't treat your wife like that, and why are you acting like that with your son? They're probably going to be like, get the hell out of my armored vehicle, right? You're not allowed in here anymore, right? So you have to make sure that you're using language that is supportive of them, that you're saying, hey, I see that you might be struggling a little bit right now, as evidenced by, at some point you seem like you were doing really well and now you're isolating, right? Or now you're, you know, having some of those things that I know this isn't who you want to be. How can I support you? Right? It really is about connection. The more that we can connect to people, like human beings, listen, safety, satisfaction, and connection. If any of you are unhappy, if any of your spouses are unhappy, it's because you're missing those basic things, one or all of them. Safety, satisfaction, connection. So be safe when you approach him, right? And connect with him.
Okay.
We also had some ladies that were asking about the alcohol program that you were talking about. Okay. Do you offer that?
That's part of my coaching business. Yeah.
So is that, so I can send them to your coaching business and they can get the information on that. Okay, perfect.
But here's the thing. The person that's having issues with drinking has to be the one
right.
that decides to do the work, right? Because as much as we'd love to do the work for somebody else, that also goes for, that's a whole other thing. But I work with people that they just want to cut back. They just know that a bottle of wine every night is not really what they want to be doing. We see all these funny memes on Facebook. Sometimes it's not funny, right? It's like we post this stuff and we're like, okay, it's wine time. But every day we're waking up with a hangover, and we're also overeating, and we're doing all the things that have a negative net effect in our life. And now it feels like the tail wagging the dog, so to speak. We don't want to be doing these things. Every day we say we're not going to do it anymore. And then it's 5 o'clock somewhere and we do it again. So, so that is something that I do offer. Yeah. When it's not funny anymore and it's not fun for you anymore, and now your escape is actually what you need to escape from, that's when it's time.
Nice. So you guys, you can go to her website. It's juliebevers.com. I put it on there. I will include it in the emails as well, again, when I do the replays. So are you complete? Do you have more that you'd like to add tonight?
I'm like, I could go on for 3 minutes, but I'm not going to. Next time.
Exactly.
Seriously.
No, you gave us great stuff. And I loved back before when we were talking a few days ago, and all of a sudden it fell into this being the safe place for your firefighter. So I loved that happened, and I thought that was a great thing, because it's giving us the tools to better ourselves. It's not that, you know, like Barbara was just talking about, the enabling and all of that. That's not a safe place. Enabling, not a safe place, no matter how
for
hard
them or for us. Absolutely.
Yeah, perfect. So I would like to thank you for being here, and I am grateful that we will continue this conversation. So I'm definitely not saying, you know, bye to any of this. We're gonna have a lot more conversations about different topics.
I just want to say thank you, honestly, because I feel like I watched the other 2 speakers and then caught Barbara today, and I'm like, you could not have chosen a more, I felt like, a well-rounded to really cover some deep topics. And yeah, I'm just so grateful that you put this together, honestly.
And I got the
Thank you so
chills
much.
because I didn't choose. I chose Jeff.
Yeah,
Everybody else, it was meant to
so
happen.
good.
Yeah,
It's so
meant to
good.
happen. So
Yeah.
it's perfect.
Well, if I can
Perfect.
continue to support and serve in any way, I am all in.
Absolutely, because that's what we're all about. We're all just going to keep on talking and talking and
Right.
spread the talking, and I think that, you know, that's just like my new motto now. The more we talk, the more we're going to get done, and it all starts with all of us women, and we're all talkers, so we're bound to make it happen,
Okay.
right? Right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for
Thank you
being
for
on
having me.
tonight. I appreciate you.
Yeah, thanks so much.